right. Let's do it. Let's do it. Oh, this is not me listening to you. This is you listening to me. So, kind of prefer it the other way around. Hello, my name is Andrew Morgan Smith, and I wanted to talk to you today about being organized and why being organized is so important in this job. And if you happen to be an organized person, you're a lucky son of a... So you may have already discovered this, but it's a big jump from going from a student film where you may only need to write a couple of minutes, maybe you do it over a couple weeks or a semester, to writing 30 to 80 minutes of music in as little as 3 weeks, hopefully more than that. And while you're writing all that music, you got to keep track of notes, possibly notes from multiple sources if you have producers as well as a director who's giving you notes. You even have to figure out how many minutes of music you need to write, plus how many minutes of music you need to edit. You got to keep track of revisions. You got to keep track of project versions. It's a lot of stuff to keep track of just on a project. I remember on my first feature feeling very overwhelmed.
I'm going to throw up. I think I'm gonna throw up.
Don't throw up.
It was a horror movie. It was 2 hours long. I don't really remember how much music I had to write for the movie. I just distinctly remember feeling really overwhelmed as I was trying to write this huge amount of music, especially for somebody who'd only written commercials or promo videos, some very short form things. And thankfully the director was pretty understanding. Like, I don't think he knew that I felt that way, but I definitely did. Also, the deadline was pretty fluid because it was just kind of an indie thing that he was making on the side. So we had time to do revisions and change stuff, and he ended up being happy with that score. And when we're talking on these feature films, you could be talking 70 plus cues. I've even seen cue sheets where there's over 100 cues because there's all these little tiny,
Seriously? Are you serious?
2-second bumps all over the place. And then you have to keep track of revisions. So you could have hundreds of points of data when it comes to revisions and cue numbers and all that kind of stuff. When you have this many cues and this many versions, the chances of something going wrong or the wrong cue getting delivered or some kind of confusion can get pretty high. I've actually delivered the wrong cue to the mixer before just because the director had been going through versions and said, actually, I like version 2 of this and version 1 of this and version 3 of this, and it gets very confusing. You need to know where those files are. You need to make sure that you have saved the old versions of those files so you can go through and find, oh, she wants version 2 of that cue, so I can go through, grab that version, put that in the final delivery, because mistakes happen. The more organized you are, the easier it is to be flexible with whatever somebody wants. And as you work on more projects and your career goes forward, the prices of making mistakes become bigger as well, and your team is going to get bigger. Maybe your team now has an orchestrator and a music editor and an assistant, and now every one of those people has to be on the same page with whatever you're doing, and if your setup is a mess, if you don't know where everything is, then the price for a mistake is a lot bigger. Also, this goes for you if you happen to be an assistant or an orchestrator or aiding another composer on their team. Your mistakes then affect that person's job. So if you like working for them, I'd suggest you figure out how to deal with it. Not only do you need to be organized for your own composition's sake, there's a bunch of things organizationally you'll have to have that aren't even composition related. So things like having your own LLC or S Corp for tax reasons and for liability reasons. Figuring out where all your paperwork is, your contracts, your cue sheets, your contracts for musicians if you're recording musicians. Possibly even if you're helping music supervise, you're probably going to have to aid the production in getting all the contracts cleared for the music licensing. Obviously, managing your team that's not directly composition related, but it's important, and bigger studios will actually have a manager for their teams. But, if it's just you and maybe one other person, 2 other people, you're doing it.
I think that pretty much sums it up.
You got to deal with taxes, and as composers, it gets pretty complicated. You have a lot of different income streams. You get 1099 basically from everything you're on. How do you even deal with that? You need to know what software you're using, where your expenditures, what they are. I personally hired a CPA after I tried to do my taxes one time, and it took me a week, and it was a nightmare. You need to make sure your files are backed up, as in you have your project files backed up, you have your samples backed up. Eventually you have a redundancy, so if something goes wrong, you can still work and you can still finish a movie if your computer dies. And it's not a matter of if it'll happen, it's a matter of when. Things happen, you accidentally delete something, and then you're screwed. managing tech, making sure you have all the right equipment, making sure your samples are on the right places, make sure your templates are all running right, knowing where your samples are on your computers, remembering how to get all these things downloaded and installed if it's a problem. On top of this, not only are you doing all these things, you need to make sure that you still are maintaining and growing your network on top of composing, on top of managing all this stuff. It's a lot to handle. So the moral of the story, make sure that if you're not organized, if you're not an organized person, you start developing those skills. You don't have to be perfect. Look around my office on the other side of this camera. It is not perfect. But having those skills is very important, especially as you start gaining in your career. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you taking a break from writing. I'll let you get back to it. But if you have any more questions or ideas or things you are curious about, be sure to leave them in the comments. I'm always looking for new ideas to talk about. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you later.